Okay, so here we are on site. We are in a small city park east of Pittsburgh. The location that the city has requested that this tower go is kind of along an exercise trail and this exercise trail is going to lead to a future nature trail. So we think that this is a pretty good location. We've kind of selected an area here that is between a couple of trails. The signage on our SWP tower will be readily available for the public to read so they understand why the tower is here. And we are ready to get started. So the first thing, obviously, we checked to be sure that there are no underground utilities where we are installing this SWP tower. And we were given the clear. There's nothing in the area. Our first step then is to start marking out where we're going to dig our post holes. So we've used the framing that we created back at the shop. This is our roof framing structure. We've used this, we've positioned it where we want the tower to be, and we're actually going to use the corners of this roof framing to mark where our post holes are going to be. So basically, just by using this post hole digger, I am positioning it as close to the corner of this framing as possible, and I will just go ahead and actually start marking the 4 locations where our posts will go. Okay, we've gotten our 4 holes dug, and I've set the roof structure back over top of the holes. A note about footings. We're in Western Pennsylvania. As you can see, the soil under the structure is very clayey. We do not use concrete in the holes that we dig for our SWP towers. We've dug 30 inches deep. We've used the backside of our digging bar to tamp the bases of our holes, to make sure we've got a nice tight earth underneath where our posts are going to go. And we'll actually backfill our holes with the clay that we took out of the holes. It's just a very structural soil. We don't need concrete in our post holes. Find out what the local building codes recommend. You may have to add some concrete under your posts to just provide a little better footing so that your posts don't sink in the earth over time. For our next step, we've placed our 4x4s in the holes. We still have our roof framing down on the ground. And what I am doing is I'm using a 4-foot level to be certain that our posts are perfectly plumb in both directions. This post is perfectly plumb in both directions. And so we can actually take a shovel, throw a little dirt around just the base of this post. It'll hold the post in place so that I can let go of it. It'll make sure that the base of the post doesn't move anywhere, and we'll move on to the next post. We've gotten our 4x4s installed, and we've taken the step of sliding the roof structure up the 4x4s and securing all corners with 3-inch wood screws. Our next step is going to be to mark off where our H-frame needs to be located and secured to our 4x4s. If you're following along in our written guide, the H-frame is the structure that's going to support the weight of the entire tower column, so it's a really important step. We dug our holes 30 inches deep, which means we have 86.5 inches from the bottom side of this framing to the top of our ground. Again, just like it says in our written guide. And what I'm doing is I'm measuring 60 inches down from the underside of the framing. 60 inches down, I'm marking a line so I know exactly where to start securing my H-frame. I have pre-marked my 4x4s where my first 2x6 is going to go. I've pre-drilled my 2x6s. And I staggered the holes. I've also pre-drilled the 4x4s, and I am ready to secure this 2x6 to the 4x4s using these power lags, which are a replacement for a lag bolt. Okay, so I've gotten my first 2 boards installed. As you can see, I have my 4-foot level here installed across these, and I am perfectly level. That's important because we need to make sure these are perfectly level so that when we put our tower down on it, the tower remains perfectly plumb. Okay, so again, this H-frame is creating a base for this tower to rest on. So it's a really important step to be sure that this is perfectly level, otherwise your tower will lean. Okay, so I've gotten the first 2 boards installed. I have pre-drilled these boards, and I'm ready to put my next boards in, which create the H. This is where the tower will rest. The perpendicular boards that I've installed were installed on the lines that we drew in the workshop. So as a reminder, when we cut these boards to length, we made a measurement and we struck a line on these outside boards so we knew where to put the perpendicular boards. Once again, I'm using my level to make sure everything is perfectly level, because again, if anything is out of level at this point, your tower will not be plumb. We've gotten the first 2 sections of our column installed. First thing I did was just kind of set the first 4-foot section down on my H-frame, got it nice and centered, and I tacked it down with 4 screws through the base into my 2x6s. That basically just set the base so nothing slid around anywhere. Once that was completed, I climbed the ladder. My partner actually handed me the second section, and I slid it down through the roof column so that it made connection to the first column. So our first 2 columns are installed, and we'll go ahead and get our 3rd column installed now. Before I install the final column on top of this middle column, I am going to take a few minutes just to put a couple of 2-inch screws through the roof framing and into this second column. 2 notes of importance. I'm using a 2-inch screw. And I'm also placing these screws all the way out at the corners of the column. This ensures that if this screw goes too deep, the screw doesn't protrude through the piece of T111 and into the inside of the column where the birds could potentially get injured on it. We just finished installing the 3rd column on top. The upper column is currently just slid into the middle column, the 2nd column, and it's basically balancing there. Now we're in the process of cutting some 1x4s that we'll use on all corners of these columns, which will create our rigidity of the tower. We've gotten all corners of our column covered with our 1x4s. So again, these 1x4s are really important because they're what begin to create the stability of the tower, so it never leans, it stays perfectly straight for its lifetime. But now that we've got these 1x4s installed, you can see where our insulation is going to go. So our next step is just to work on getting all the insulation installed. insulation is finished. We've got everything in there nice and snug. It is tacked up with roofing nails. You can either use roofing nails or you can use some sort of adhesive behind your insulation. The idea there is just to be sure that the insulation panels never slide down from behind your sheathing over time. So that just keeps everything in place. My next step is to install the roof sheathing that we've pre-cut back at the shop. All 4 sections of this is going to go up on the roof framing. We've gotten our roof sheathing installed, and we are in the process of cutting what will become the fascia boards. These are cut out of 10-foot long 2x4s. So basically what we're doing is we're cutting 4 of them to length so that we can secure them directly underneath the edge of the roof sheathing. It'll create sort of a fascia board where our drip edge will rest against. We will secure our drip edge down to the roof sheathing, and the part that comes down vertically will rest against these fascia boards. So we're going to cut those, we'll get them installed, we'll get our drip edge installed, and then we are going to put our tar paper down so we can start shingling our roof. We are back on site for day 2 of our ASWP tower installation. As you can see, on day 1 we got basically everything constructed. The tower is installed. We have our drip edge for our roof and our paper installed on the roof. So because we want to keep everything 100% waterproof, there's a series of steps here that we need to take to sort of layer all of our materials. We installed our drip edge first. Over top of the drip edge we have our paper. Over top of the paper we're going to put our 3-tab shingles. Once we have the roof completely shingled, we will go ahead and install some aluminum around the outside of the upper tower that overlaps the upper portion of our shingles. Then we will be ready for the sheathing for all the way around our upper and lower portions of our columns. We've got our flashing pre-cut. These are the cuts that we completed in the workshop. We've left them unbent just to get them here to the park a little easier. So my next step is going to be to go ahead and fit this flashing around the outside of the upper column, bend it so that it then overlaps the shingles that I've just installed. That'll just make sure that any rain that runs down the finished siding of the upper tower hits the flashing and runs across the top of the shingles rather than permeating inside of the structure. Okay, we've gotten our flashing installed. So we've got the flashing on the outside of our tower and over top of our finished shingled roof. And our next step is going to be to install our finished facade. And as a reminder, in this case, we're using LP Smart Side as our facade material. So we're going to get all that stuff cut to length and we'll start installing. We're in the process of installing our facade material, and I just wanted to point out one thing about the screw locations. I am locating screws pretty far out toward the corner of my sheathing. Similar to when we put the screws through the 1x4s, we want to make sure that our screws are located out toward the corners of the tower to ensure that we are not protruding through the tower into the portion where the birds might be located. And secondly, the screw location is important here because our trim pieces will completely cover over these screws. So you'll see no screw heads once we have our trim boards installed. We're here with the final steps of our Chimney Swift Tower. We've gotten the facade material all installed. We've gotten the trim installed. We caulked everything in so that everything was weather tight and painted. Our final two steps are installing our kiosk panels. We'll put these on all four sides of our kiosk style tower. And then we have a couple of educational panels that we'll put on as a final step.